We'll go ahead and get started here, because I know y'all came from James Island and East Cooper and everywhere else to get here, and we got a lot to cover. I'm Joel Evans. I'm the director for the planning department for Charleston County, and I'll quickly introduce some of the staff that's here. Jennifer Miller, our deputy administrator, is in the back. Andrea Petrus is right beside her. She's the Deputy Director for Charleston County Planning. We also have Suzanne Chavis with the Planning Commission, David Kent with the Planning Commission, Charlie Smith with the Planning Commission. And I also want to introduce Sally Brooks in the back on the sign-in, and Stephen Rissy. We also have Jen Maddow. This is being videotaped right now, so we can go back and look at it as well. And we also have Sean Smetana, our PIO, Public Information Officer. Also want to introduce Brad Sauls, if you could. Yeah, Brad Sauls is with the South Carolina Department of Archives and History. So he's been helping us through this process. So, and then quickly I want to introduce the consultants, and I don't know your last names, but I know it's Summer and Mary Beth. Very good. So you all will be, they'll be presenting some information tonight too to help us go through this process, as we go through this process. So really why we're here is because the last time that we had any significant historic archiving for Charleston County was in 89 and in 92, 1989 and 1992, so it's been quite a while. And of course, when you think of Charleston, the first thing you think of is history. And of course, in downtown, they've done a good job of preserving the buildings. And everyone knows the plantations out on 61, I think. But other than that, you really have to search to find out the history of Charleston County. And there is a lot of it out there. And that's what we're trying to do, is trying to, in this new update for historic preservation, is trying to capture as much of that as we can. So I'm just going to hand it over to Andrea Harris, and she'll get this started. And Andrea is also with the planning department. I forgot to mention you. I knew I'd forget somebody. And she's the main one doing this project. Sorry about that, Andrea.
That's okay.
So Andrea will start it off, and then the consultants will discuss what they're going to be doing. And if you have any questions during any of this, please speak up. What we do want to be able to get, not necessarily tonight, but we can get some of it tonight. But I was talking to Mr. Habersham, for instance, in the corner over there. There's a lot of oral history that we need to capture and archive. And that's a good start for how we start documenting some of the other things. And there's some really neat things going on in the county that we want to include in this new update. So go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight. I just wanted to kind of go over a quick overview of kind of how we got to this point. So in 2014, a Historic Preservation Committee of Planning Commission was established. And that was really established to identify ways to preserve and enhance the history in Charleston County. As Joel mentioned, we've done a really good job of incorporating and preserving history in the incorporated parts of the county, but not as well in the unincorporated parts of the county. So this commission really saw that was an opportunity for us to kind of identify a new focus area for the county. And then we also wanted to use this as a way to carry out some of the strategies in the comprehensive plan. We have the cultural resources element, and that really identifies ways to preserve our cultural resources and our historic resources. So in February 2015, the county decided to apply for a federal historic preservation grant to fund an update to the county historical and architectural surveys, because it had been a while, almost 20 years, over 20 years since we had done it. So this was really necessary because we needed an updated inventory if we were going to start preserving our local resources, and then also it would help drive future initiatives, because part of this process will identify recommendations for how the county can move forward in historic preservation. So in summer 2015, we luckily were awarded the grant, and this grant is a National Park Service grant that's administered by the South Carolina Department of Archives and History. And in fall 2015, we advertised a request for proposals as part of the process to hire a consultant to do the technical work. And so in November 2015, we reviewed those RFPs and selected New South Associates to carry out the project work. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to New South Associates, and they're going to give a really in-depth overview of the actual project. Yes?
Can you just clarify the scope of this study relative to the other two studies?
Sure.
This study is bounded by certain years.
Right.
Were the other studies also bounded by similar years or different years or unbounded?
Whenever the 1989 and 92 studies were done, those were really focusing on any resources, because that was the first time a county-wide study had been done. So any resources at that time over 50 years of age. So it was anything pre-1940 essentially. But the scope of this project will be discussed whenever the New South Associates goes over. So they'll go over in detail what's the scope of work is. Any other questions before we turn it over? Okay, thanks.
Which way? All right. Perfect. Good evening. I'm very happy to be here tonight. I'm Mary Beth Reed, head of the History Department at New South Associates. And I'd like to talk a little bit before I talk about what we're going to do in this project, about who we are, and introduce you, if you don't know about us, to this community. We've been in business since 1988. It seems hard to think to me. I've been there from the beginning. We started out in Stone Mountain, Georgia, but we have offices in Columbia, South Carolina, as we've grown over to Greensboro, North Carolina, Louisiana. There's an outpost there on Fort Polk, not a very happy one at all times. It's tough territory there, as well as Nashville, Tennessee. We are a woman-owned small business, and we are a business that I would have to characterize as very interested in research and learning about cultural resources. Our crowd, our team, really, it invigorates them to go out and learn and about cultural resources across the Southeast. So we're delighted to be here to learn more about Charleston counties. What we do context development. That means historical research and presenting larger pictures that help frame how we talk about resources. Archaeology, preservation planning, geophysical work, as well as special studies. So a wide range of disciplines. The one I'm here to talk about tonight is architectural history. I'm head of the history department at New South Associates, and I'm very proud of the work we do and of the work we've done in South Carolina that brings us here tonight. We have worked underneath similar grants. I've worked with Brad Sauls before. We did a survey that's similar in Kershaw County, Georgetown County, Marion, and Horry. And we were delighted to work with South Carolina Department of Transportation on a history of country stores in the state, which we're very, very proud of. It was a great project, and it turned out a great document that helps us understand how important country stores were in rural South Carolina. And of course, we took a lot of that information back to Georgia too, because it does apply. We were chosen to work in the city of Sumter to do a survey there, and we worked with the General Services Administration to look at their modern buildings throughout the Southeast in their Sun Belt region, and that would be from North Carolina over to Louisiana, and that was also an interesting one. Florida's got some nice buildings as well as Columbia. And finally, we did a historic American engineering record study of the Grace Memorial Bridge. I'll never forget it, as I'm sure a lot of people here feel the same way. But that is now in the Library of Congress. We're very proud of that work. And we've done a lot of transportation work here in South Carolina. So we bring that kind of experience to this project. And I'd like to go over the objectives so that everyone understands what we're going for here. Number one, our first objective, and these objectives are really defined by the state in partnership, I guess, with the county. The first objective is to develop their historical research so we understand the resources. We're going out to survey, but we need some sort of foundation. And to do that, what we do in cultural resources management is to build a historic context. So you're looking at various sources to get a sense of what you should be seeing out there, you know? It's not a dissertation. I do not want to give that impression. It is an overview. It hits the highlights. What themes are important in Charleston County? What do we need to look for? Secondly, you've heard quite a few times tonight, you have Some counties actually don't have inventories in 1989 or 1992. Some counties don't have any inventories. You folks have been terrific in doing this, and this update pushes you even further. As noted by Andrea, your previous studies used the National Register age threshold, so they looked at things or resources that were 50 years of age and older. We're going to pretty much do the same thing, but bring it through the modern era. So we're going to be looking at buildings, structures, districts, objects, and sites that were constructed or become significant between 1940 and 1975. I always get the dates wrong, for some reason. So we're looking at that post-World War II period. What better period to look at? It excites me just to think about it. So much went on. Our goal is to look at unincorporated Charleston, the resources out there, and we're looking at probably up to 1,200 resources. We get an estimate like that is derived primarily from tax data, and that kind of gives us a ballpark to see what we're out there. The post-World War II period, we're going to see a lot of resources, so we need to kind of get that number in our head, and that enables us to work with the sort of survey protocol that I'm going to be talking about in a minute. So those are our objectives. Let's talk a little bit about each one. The historic context. Secondary research is done at the major institutions in the state, with the county. We're looking at recent past resources, so that's a little bit different. So we talked to Charleston County about what planning documents they had. We're looking at maps that look particularly at the time period that we're dealing with. Like right behind me, is the 1942 county highway map. These maps have a lot of cultural information on them that we can transfer and better learn about the landscape that we see today as we go in the field. Historic views are not just used to illustrate, they're also to better help us understand the landscape that we're going to be seeing. And they come from people like you. We have Ms. Jacobs, who brought 4 views tonight, and I invite you to go up to Station 1 over here afterwards and take a look. I think you'll enjoy them, and we'll talk about those in a minute. But these historic views are ways of us understanding the past. They're artifacts. We need to look at them, understand, and glean from them the information needed. So these sorts of sources, and as I said, primary and secondary information, are built into a historic context. That's the first objective. Our survey area, I want to repeat, is unincorporated Charleston County. It doesn't mean that you don't put your feet over in incorporated Charleston County. I don't mean that. But we have to define our goals, and we have to be realistic as we move forward. To do a survey, you always figure out what's known first, all right? So here is a map showing your National Register listed resources, where they are, because we're trying to figure out where they are, what they are, and why they're significant. We also, before we go out in the field, is take a look at what's been previously recorded, okay? So that's the results of your 1992 survey, and that kind of gives you an idea of your density, where the survey, came through with buildings, and kind of it clues us in. This is the information we will be taking out in the field. When we do survey at New South Associates, you have to have 2 people in a car. I'm just going to be frank with you. 1 to drive, they watch the road, 1 to look at the resources. We've learned this over time. 3 people is even better, but you normally can't do that. The historian in charge of the survey, who will actually be out in the car, is Summer Siomic here. Summer, can you stand up? There you go, thank you. And we have Katie Dykens, who is a recent Clemson Historic Preservation MA, who's going to be joining Summer in the field. We're very pleased. They're both starting in March. And I've convinced Summer to put a GoPro camera on her dashboard. You see they're using a GoPro camera here. This enables us and the people behind the surveyors to take a look at the landscape that they were viewing as they go along. Nothing like it, as long as they go slow. These 2 gentlemen in here, I've yelled at more times watching their GoPro film, because what was that speed you were going on that one? Because you really can see it. But these cameras, from a survey perspective, are fantastic. It's a tool, and we will be using those. When I say survey protocol, the South Carolina state has guidelines that we will follow. There are forms to be done. These are things that we've done before. Buildings are captured in photography and with descriptions, as well as the other types of resource that we were talking about. We are going to order our survey. Summer and Katie are going to start probably in the north part of the county. We kind of divide the county or the unincorporated into chunks so we know where they are, what they're doing. They will have a letter from Andrea from the county so people don't think we're from the tax office. That is always our worst. We get to know every dog in the county when we do our surveys. I know that too. Dogs always come out to greet us, and we go, oh, I don't know. We'll wait and see if they're friendly or not. But that's pretty much par for the course. Now, I'd like to go over what we survey, okay? I said buildings. First of all, there is a key ramification here. We're looking at these resources that gained significance between 1940 and 1975. It doesn't mean that, and we were just talking to Andrea about some resources, that doesn't mean it's something that mushroomed up in 1940. Do you understand what I mean? We understand that communities change, but we want to kind of capture this period. So we're going to be looking at let's say if a community has been in existence since 1880, for instance, and in 1930, 1940, they develop maybe a new type of house, or there's lots of ways to think about this. Communities are growing. We're capturing them at one time and place. And then obviously Summer and Katie will look at this and talk about their overall significance. There will be, during the modern era, some buildings that do come up quickly. I was very lucky. We're going to see subdivisions, ranch houses, split levels, all the sort of houses that many of us grew up in, small houses. We're going to see kit houses down in some of those coastal communities that we might not know very much about, something that was bought as a kit and then put up. And we're going to see the influence of modern architecture. I was very lucky to work on a report in downtown Charleston within the last 6 months where I learned about Augustus Constantine. And it was great. We are looking, our firm has been looking at modern downtown Atlanta and looking at the influence of Georgia Tech on the region's architecture and architects. And here is a Greek immigrant that comes in, he goes to school at Georgia Tech, and then goes out and it really starts putting a stamp on what I would call modern Charleston. And we will be delighted to find some examples of his work in the unincorporated area and others like him, and to learn about that. So we're looking, and I think that's more likely on commercial and institutional buildings where we might see the influence of some of these modern architects. But we may see, some of you have already talked about some resources we need to look at. I think it was the buildings on Lakeshore Drive. It seemed like there may be a subdivision there. So we're hoping to hear from you, because I think you all know that there are some things we absolutely have to look at that are important for this time period. Structures, they're hard categories. It's bridges, fire towers. They're not buildings, in other words. You don't live in them. But there's plenty of other things out there. Districts, that means concentrations of resources, okay, regardless of type. And then finally, statuary, signage, that can all be on there. And to help you, or just to get this point across, is why are we looking at that? If you don't know, the archives here in your state has produced a very nice handbook on what is modernism and what is it in your landscape. And Summer, I don't have a copy. Can you put that up, please? We brought 4 copies tonight. We have the link for that. That's underneath here. But this really talks to this time period and the sort of things you're going to see. Things associated with World War II, the Cold War. You're talking about new residential developments. There's a variety of things that come about in this time period. And this is a really nice manual and gives people a better sense of what we're looking for here. So please, there's one at each of these map stations. So after we're done talking, just flip through. It only takes a couple of minutes. It's very easily understood. It's a lot of fun, actually. They did a great job. To summarize, we're going to record resources that tell the story. Charleston, I know, it is an incredibly historic city, and I love visiting the downtown Charleston, but you have the modern story to tell too, and that's kind of what this is about. Modern resources, I'll be frank with you, are sometimes more at risk than any others because we don't appreciate them. We don't get it. The building that, the Constantine building that I worked with, it was something everyone went, it's modern. That's actually how they said it in a derogatory term. And I went, yeah, it's modern. Turn that around, and think why. Why is this box so important in terms of us understanding modern Charleston? And I think for that reason, we just don't appreciate these resources, and we need to. We get them in Myrtle Beach, I think, but we don't get them elsewhere. We will be using the National Register of Historic Places criteria. I won't go through these with you. I think some of you probably know them. Buildings, resources have to be 50 years of age, and they have to be associated with important events, people. They have to be significant for their type or for information they can yield. These are established National Register criteria, because we will be looking, after we're done the inventory, at these resources to say which of these are super important, which of these are eligible for the National Register, and we will make recommendations. Now, we just make recommendations. Consultants really have no decision-making power. They just say, we think these are important. The state will be looking at those, and they will actually provide determinations of eligibility. We were going to, at the end of the day, when we're all done this project, there will be a survey report. The context I talked about will be in there. That's always chapter 2. That's always the longest one in some ways. There will be a inventory, in other words, a long table that talks about everything that we found. There'll be recommendations for National Register evaluations, and there'll be recommendations on what to do next. Because every survey should have what to do next. Because we're not going to cover everything. But we can actually look and say, what are the priorities, where they need to go from here, and kind of offer that information. So the project timeline. I can barely see this. Here we go. We're going to develop the historic context. This is public meeting number 1. There will be a public meeting number 2. And at that point, Summer will be giving that, because she's going to be more of the authority. She's the one who's going to be standing in front of all those buildings and structures and such to talk to you about that. We're going to start fieldwork. Fieldwork really is starting in March, and we'll go through April. And we will start putting together the draft survey report in 2016 and finalizing that in August, and then give a public meeting on the results at that point in time. The project has to be complete. We have a grant deadline, so September is it. So we look very much forward to March and April over here in Charleston County. We ask everybody, there's a Facebook for the project. I'm hoping some of our GoPro, if we can do clips from our GoPro survey, that we can actually put that on the Facebook page. We'll see what we can do there so people can find, where do we go this week? Where are we? And I'll have Summer and Katie kind of give you a week by week where we are, because that tells you where we're going to be, which is kind of fun. But please go on the Facebook. If you have a historic picture, if you know of a place, please let us know. Just get on Facebook, say, hey, Mary Beth and Katie, Summer, Andrea, just put the information out there, and we will contact you or look into it. Learn more about the recent past. I already told you about the Historic Preservation Office's manual. Please take a look at that. You can take a look at tonight. Preservation Society of Charleston. These are, and obviously the Charleston County Historical, the update webpage. So these are all great resources for you to learn about what we're doing, how we're doing it, and where we're doing it as we do it. And we invite you tonight. We set up 4 map stations, and one of us will be at each one. First of all, Miss Jacobs' incredible photographs are here on the floor, and I want all of you to look at it. There's a prisoner of war camp. You need to look at these oversized, gorgeous photographs that capture a little bit of Charleston County history. But at the workstations, there will be a historian or a member of the planning department to go talk with us, show us where things are, if you can, on the map. The maps are to be written on. We also have comment cards in the back that we offer people. Write down your thoughts if you don't want to jump up and talk with us right away or have to get out of here. Any way you can, get the information to us, and we will come speak with you and follow up on this. I thank you for listening to me tonight, and if you have any questions, I'll do my best. Yes, sir.
What have you already submitted your project to the state archive of history, which I have done.
Yes.
My project that I have submitted the PIF to the South Carolina archive of history. I've done that already. So I'm trying to. I've not heard back from them yet. They had it for a year now. But it didn't take a year to evaluate everything. I took a lot of documentation up there to go through.
Is this on a site or a community,
This
sir?
is the site, and it's in the community.
And the name of the community?
Solid Creek on James Island.
Okay. Well, Summer, you can talk to Brad Sauls, and we can take a look at the PIF that's been prepared, and then we will talk with
I've
you,
already submitted something to the county here.
to the county here.
Yeah.
But to the state as well?
I gave it to the state
Okay.
first, and then I came back and, because the county just got started in 2014. And I'm very interested in the preservation for the county, you know, so I did my homework.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
When you say PIF, I know you did it.
Yeah.
You got the acronym. But let me, sir,
Yeah.
let's get, so we want to make sure that we see that material, okay?
Sure.
All right. Because we'd like to learn from that. As I said, we're looking at communities primarily in the 20th century, but your community is still alive and well in the 20th century. So we need to start with that, okay?
We have several communities like that, like Mr. Havisham's Phillips community. You'll see them when you go. There's 6 mile and 10 mile communities that are in unincorporated, but they're pockets that are surrounded by a municipality.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what we might do is develop some sort of community focuses. Do you understand? Sometimes we build this towards building sites, that sort of thing, and kind of think of them as focal points.
Right.
And I would be happy to talk to Brad Sauls about how to put that together. But I think that might be what we're seeing here. It certainly is what I see when I drive through Charleston County too. I see communities, and we need to capture the data. And so we will work with you folks to do that with the county. Okay? I think that'd be really interesting. How great would that be? What a great layer of information too. So, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm very concerned about the Liberty Hill community, which is in North Charleston County. And I don't know what has been done after this point. Like you said, you went back to 1940, but this is one of the oldest African-American community, and Solomon probably follows us, in North Charleston.
mm-hmm.
And it would really be a shame if this history is not captured and marked, because we're moving so fast in North Charleston. And so I don't think anything is going to be left after that. And also, there is a St. Peter's AME church that's in that Liberty Hill community. And this church is over 140 years old.
Mhm.
The whole community was designed and created by free men of color, and it's really a very historical place. And I'm really, really, really wanting to get it marked, get something that identifies where it came from, how it got here, how it left.
I understand. I think this may come in the recommendations part of it. Like we may have our survey that we have to do, so to speak, but in that record, where are the shortfalls? Where are we not covering? How do we cover those? I think that's the best way to look at this. But we need to look and see what's been reported on it already, okay? So we will be in touch. Okay. No, thank you. There was a hand. Sir.
I guess books or historical documents are you could consult before you go out and do your GoPro survey.
Well, what we typically do is secondary source research. As I said, it's not a dissertation. It's looking at the major events. So when you look at Charleston County, what's going on here after World War II, excuse me. And some of those are actually national trends. You have suburbanization. That's one of the major things. You have the use of the Southeast for military bases. The Charleston Navy Yard is obviously big. You have to look at civil rights. This is a very important time period for civil rights era sites. And sometimes we don't know about those until we talk to people, to be honest with you. Do you understand? Again, I pull on my own experience. We're looking at historic cemeteries in Georgia, and I had no idea the role of the African American undertaker or funeral parlor, not only to the community, but also to civil rights. Also to civil rights. Things happened there at that end. That's what I mean. That could be a funeral parlor that actually was established in 1880, but it gains true significance 1960 to 19. Do you understand me? During this time period. So that's kind of one of those close things that we have to watch. So it can be an older resource, but if it gains significance during this, we have to consider that. It's underneath this context. So in a general sense, we went to South Carolina. We've been to the resources down here. Nick, we're following up with Nick big time. No, but truly, those are and we don't need to know everything going out, but when we encounter something in the field, we need to be able to go and check it out with informed folks like you to say, what does this mean? Where does it fit into this story? You know, how do we understand this? Because I think that's an important part of it. So that a lot of it's follow-up as well, to be honest with you. Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
You were talking about oral histories. How are you going to identify those that you could be interviewing?
Well, oral history in the context of a survey is different than oral history where you're actually going out to look or learn about a community. When I talk about oral history here, it's people telling me information, exchanging information, as opposed to a 2-hour interview that would be filmed, and that we would follow the OAR's guidelines as a historian doing that sort of oral history. But for the purpose of this survey, it's very important to get community input and oral history on places and what they mean. Bringing out the family scrapbook sometimes is incredibly important. I always learn in my own hometown community of Stone Mountain. You'd be amazed. You're looking at the bride. It's the bride's picture, but the church behind it. You see, you learn a lot. We have 4th of July parades down Main Street. I finally see the whole streetscape. You know what I mean? So, getting those kind of things, talking to people, getting their memories. That gives us some sense of where things are important or not. So it is a very different, rather than an in-depth oral history. Because some of the communities that you folks are talking about, they deserve the in-depth oral history treatment. Yes, sir.
All of this is now for unincorporated areas.
Yes, sir.
Tom James Island has been incorporated, unincorporated, and reincorporated. So our boundaries have changed, expanded, retracted. So where would we fit in there? Because today's boundaries are not what they were 3 years ago, 5 years ago. So
I understand where you're going. I wish you would have said, wish me luck. I need a good faith thing there. I think what we would do in that case, wow, that's something else. What we would talk about is with the county and say, okay, what do we do here? What's reasonable? What's reasonable?
I just come out and talk to the town and historically.
We are always willing to talk, especially as we do these surveys. We'd be happy to volunteer our time to go and talk, but not during the workday. If we could do it at night or something like that. Yes.
What about monthly meetings?
Probably better after we, I'm trying to think, we could talk about that. But yes, typically in other surveys, I know when we did Kershaw, I went to the Historical Society and talked in the evening and exchanged information. Sometimes we brought our maps with us, said, hey, look at what we found. And then people went, but
I think that would be very good for historical.
getting the information.
And then we can work with you to identify some of those important objects and towns and the other areas that are in your objectives.
We will do our best. Let's talk and see what we can do. Okay?
And
Thank you.
Especially for ladies from Liberty Hill, if there are areas that won't fall in the unincorporated county that are in the cities that are incorporated that won't be part of this study, I was thinking that if you want to talk to us afterwards, there's a way to work directly with the state to accomplish the same thing that you're trying to get to. So.
Well, and also there are parts of John's Island that the city of Charleston was not incorporated in during this time. So it would be a similar
I tend to think that the scope of work refers to what it is right now. I would think that. But again, that would isolate or tell me where surveys needed. Do you understand? If I understand that parameter, and I get where you're going with that, would be a shortfall to my mind. In other words, we're leaving a hole, an omission. Yeah, I want gaps. I don't want the gaps. So what we may do is take a look at those, see how far we go ahead. We have permission from the state. Let's say we get into a subdivision, a large subdivision. We have permission to treat that as one resource. We go in, we photograph the basic types, the plan, the entry, the things that make that subdivision possibly significant, okay? We're taking, but they've allowed us to do that rather than do every building in there, okay? And that might give us time to go back and pick up the shortfall areas. But I think that would be the smart thing to do.
Can you see the timeline again, the hospital?
Go back. There you go. Does that help?
I just wanted to,
Okay. Well, me too, but we're at the start of the project, so it always looks good. Yes, sir.
Since your focus is 1940 to 1975, is it assumed or just simply understood that resources that were established prior to that period are already captured? Or is it possible that some have been missed in prior work?
Both. Both. What we are going to do is we take out, and we're going to have tablets in the field, okay? Computers that enable us to have what's been previously recorded in there. And then the tax information on stuff that's not, okay? So we're going to have to make judgment calls as you go through. But that tells us what the lay of the land is as we drive through. It's hard. it is hard, but yes, and there will be things that were missed. It's just the way it works. And I try and be nice about that, but sometimes you're at the end of the day, we're lucky, it won't be the dead summer when summer's out there. It'll be a nice spring, so it's not, but at the end of the day, sometimes you miss things. You don't like to think that. But this is, again, if we see something like that, we can make note of it and say, do we need to go back? Andrea, what do we have here, kind of thing.
Is the objective to be exhaustive with respect to the resources between 40 and 75? Or
Things that are most significant, the things that tell the story. So if you have 5 subdivisions that look exactly like, we're gonna count them, we're gonna make sure we capture it. But that, does that get us where we need to go to talk about this story? But then there are things, like when I hear about communities like this, or a modern architect we didn't know about before, those are stories we need to capture. Or people coming out of World War II. What the ranch house did for people coming out of World War II, I mean, it's amazing. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I know we are getting ready to break up into groups in our little section, but my community is, the community I live in is very historical. It goes back beyond the 40s, because the 54th Massachusetts marched down where it was a station on Salt Creek.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a lot of people coming on Salt Creek with their little gadget to search for buttons. They find buttons, bullets, and all that stuff. So my question is, that whole community needs to be considered. Not only the site that I'm putting in for historical, but that whole community should be considered as a historical site because of the significance of what took place there. I have my community leaders in here right there with Susan Chavez, and she know what I'm talking about. She was trying to get it as a historical entity because it's so much history. We just got a large hall on the historical archive and a monument for the 54th, where the battle was fought there before they went to Barry Wagner.
Well, it sounds like it's still under consideration then.
Yes, we've discussed it, I've met with them
Okay.
before.
Because I think that might be the right way to treat it. There has to be something more embracing, and I think to talk about something like that.
Ready to break off? I'm ready.
Ready? All right, we're breaking up into groups.
All right.
Good luck.